Okay. And this is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville approving and authorizing the Interfund loan in the amount of $1,802,269.98 from the Fund 101 General Fund to Fund 298 Housing Asset Fund in order to make timely debt service payments due November 8, 2013, pursuant to the promissory note held by Charles A. and Elizabeth C. Leone Living Trust and Miriam N. Flynn Trust 1, as well as payments to the State Franchise Tax Board, which notes are secured by deeds of trust encumbered for property 5890 and 5900 Christie Avenue, Emeryville. Mr. Biddle.
Yes, the council recalled that in March 2011, the redevelopment agency authorized the acquisition of the properties at 5890, 5900 Christie Avenue. The purchase price that was agreed to eventually was $9.6 million. At the close of escrow, the agency made a payment of $1.5 million and then carried back, the sellers carried back two promissory notes, one in favor of the Leone Trust in roughly $4.2 million and the Flynn Trust in the amount of roughly $3.9 million. With the dissolution of the redevelopment agency, the city as a successor agency listed the obligations due under the Leone and Flynn note as enforceable obligations on the ROPS, but those obligations were denied by the Department of Finance. Additionally, as part of the low-mod Income Housing Fund due diligence review, the Department of Finance ordered that the $1.5 million down payment also that was made by the redevelopment agency, that be refunded to the low-mod fund. In any event, the City Council has previously authorized interfund loans between the General Fund and the Housing Assets Fund to, one, repay that $1.5 million, two, to make the first payment that was due on those two notes back in November of 2012. And now we are before you asking for an advance to the Housing Assets Fund to make this second payment. And so that's where we are this evening. I will note that just these properties were transferred to the city as part of housing assets, but when you really look at it, the fact that the Department of Finance has denied the purchase and sale agreement as an enforceable obligation, it's really now an asset that's held solely by the city, and likewise the city has paid for that asset solely out of its general fund. So going forward, what we had done previously is we had talked about committing the eventual repayment that will come to the city of CRAF money. There's about $9.6 million that's going to come back to the city over time that we would utilize those monies to repay the general fund. But keep in mind, if you utilize those CRAF monies for the repayment to the general fund for these properties, then these properties will have been paid for with affordable housing money, and then you will be obligated at that point to then make sure that you provide for affordable housing in the eventual development of the parcels. Currently, you do not, since you've just used general fund money, you don't have that obligation. So when we get further down the line and we look at disposing of this property, you could certainly look at utilizing the sales proceeds from the sale of the property as a means to repay the general fund, and that gives you then a very broad or ability to to require or allow for any type of development, be it housing or and so you're not necessarily required to then provide for affordable housing. So you could have housing or some other mix of use there, and then you could utilize the sales proceeds to to repay the general fund, and then you would still have your $9.6 million of CRAF money coming back to the city as the housing successor to then utilize that money for other affordable housing purposes. That's just something to keep in mind. It's nothing you need to worry about this evening, but I just wanted to make sure that the council was aware of that. So we do need to make this payment due to the Leones and the Flynns. That is due this Friday. And the resolution before you provides for an appropriation of money to allow for those payments.
Mayor Brinkman?
Yes.
Michael, I have a question. I'm a little uncomfortable with taking almost $2 million from the general fund, which I consider to be an operating fund of the city. And my question is, if we took this instead out of the economic uncertainty fund, would we still have the flexibility going forward, not to just confine ourselves to housing on the
Yes.
site?
Yes.
And so my question to you, Sabrina, is rather than touch the general fund, which takes a lot of heat, would we be able to take it out of economic uncertainty?
Do you have the fund balance on that?
Yes.
And there's enough to still satisfy the policy?
Yeah, that would be fine. There's sufficient fund balance in that fund, and you'd still satisfy your policy.
Well, I'd like to just ask my fellow council members, I don't know whether you have the same concern as I do for the general fund, but lots of things happen in this city,
Right.
and I'd like to see that we maintain kind of a strong arms around the general fund. We do have the economic uncertainty. We will be able to pay that fund back, and yet we're still leaving the general fund intact. So I don't know how you guys feel about that.
It's like either taking on checking or savings, so
Well, exactly, but checking is your operating fund.
I agree.
That's okay.
So I would say economic.
I would make a motion to move ahead and take it out of economic uncertainty instead of the general fund.
Yeah, I share that. I think it's painful paying this out of our general fund. Who knew when we made these decisions a couple of years ago what was going to happen and unfold in terms of redevelopment funds and the state disallowing this on our ROPS. I, however, feel strongly that having some component that's affordable housing at the site is important, and that's the reason that I have supported this along. So I just want to make that really clear, and I don't want to be backing out of that at this time at all.
Let me remind you also, we're talking about 5890, 5900, and then we also own the adjacent parcel 6150, which is the big hole there, and that was acquired with affordable housing. So you could assemble those, offer up those three parcels, and and as part of that request for proposals or wherever you do, you could obviously you're going to have to require affordable housing to satisfy that component of it, because you have property, a third of the parcel, one of three properties that were acquired with affordable housing funds.
Well, I think this is a very valuable asset, frankly, and it's in an amazing location for future considerations. So I just want to highlight that and also make sure that we're not making those decisions now or even assumptions around those. In fact, if I could know what the status is of our long-term property management plan, I think it's called, that we need to put together since our finding of completion, that I assume would be wrapped into some of this?
This is not wrapped into that. This is property that is owned by the city, free and clear. It's not part of that process at all. But in any event, Helen and her staff, and I know Charlie and others have had a hand in putting together a draft of the long-range property management plan. It's something that I'm looking at. I know we were trying to bring it to you in November, but I think more than likely, because there are some, I don't have concerns about it, but I do have some concerns about positions that the Department of Finance is taking, that I do want to consult with some outside counsel who've already been through the process. So we're more than likely looking at it coming to you in January.
Is that within our 6 months?
Yes, it has to be, it would then go to the Oversight Board in February,
Okay, thank you.
and that's within your 6 months.
So I guess outside of that requirement, which is separate, having some sense of long-term, we've also been impacted by the Palmer decision in terms of inclusionary housing, and I guess it'd be nice, and I don't know when the best time is to consider this, but to kind of look at all of those elements in terms of properties such as this and affordable housing in town. When is it good to take kind of stock of that? I don't think it's part of our SIP plan, so we're not going to be talking about it relating to that.
And Helen can speak to the timing of the linkage fee, the study that we're doing.
Right. We're working on the linkage fee for affordable housing, and also as part of the mid-year budget adjustment, we are allocated some funds to proceed with a planning study, particularly for these parcels that we're speaking about. So we plan on getting that underway this winter, and that'll be coming to you for an RFP. So that we perceive there'll be a process whereby you can look at those properties and come to a consensus on how you'd like to see them developed.
But I would note that the Palmer case and the inclusionary housing really pertains primarily to private development and our ability to require affordable housing in private development. These projects, these parcels on Christie Avenue, we own, so we can require affordable housing in those without this mechanism.
Right, unless someone talks about disposing of them and having private development on them, and that's where I want to understand better what can be required in terms of private development as well. So just the big picture, I guess.
I was thinking of that in the context of we're soliciting proposals, but
Oh, okay.
we're still dictating, what gets built there. But
Right.
if you're allowing for some, market rate housing, market rate commercial, whatever as part of that, then you're not. You shouldn't have to then just write down
Give
the
away the
land,
land.
give away the land.
Right, fine, thank you.
Ken, you
Yeah.
have something on this item?
Just want to make a comment. I actually didn't agree that this was a good housing site because the land is very expensive and you're going to get less bang to the buck by having affordable housing here. And if the city owns it, then you'd have to have a housing agency if you're going to run it. So you probably want to have a private company do it. It's right next to the marketplace. There's a lot of noise there. And I never thought this was a good site for housing, so it's my opinion.
Call the question.
Call the question.
A motion by
Davis.
Davis. I don't think we have a second.
I'll second it.
Councilmember Atkin.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember West.
Aye.
Vice Chair Asher. I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Asher.
Aye.
And Mayor Brinkman.
Aye. Okay.